recording. Hey, Jalina.
Hey Mike. Hey recording. Hey y'all.
Okay. Yeah, that was a very exciting intro, and also this is a very exciting moment. I would like to thank you all for the invitation. And me and Jalina are gonna freestyle a little bit. I mean, there's a little bit of presentation that's gonna happen here, which I'll get to in a moment. Um, And then there's also just some stories from the field that, I mean, we will be sharing. So gonna drop in the chat just a little bit of what is the shape of the next bit of the agenda. So we've had a chance to kind of do a little bit of the utopian checking in. And I would love for us to stay in that utopian space, right? Just keep imagining like what the future looks like without money, right? What it looks like for us to be able to resource our communities, to meet our needs, to figure out sort of what our relationships of reliance and sustainability are, and what you have to offer, because for me, that's what time banking is all about. Like that's the seed of time banking. There's a whole lot of stuff around like infrastructure and around platforms and around like coordination and facilitation and techniques and things like that. But the seed of time banking is really, have I reflected enough on what I want to make available to my community and on what terms I want to make those things available? Because that's the substance that will allow me to invite people into other layers and levels of relationship with me and taking that risk, right? I mean, effectively, like I have to be willing to take the risk to then ask other people to take the risk. And so I've had to manage taking the risk to say, hey, if you want free bike lessons and you can come to Southeast Chicago, I'll give them to you, right? I've had to be willing to take the risk to say, I got this free library in front of my house, and if you've got books, I'll put them in the library, and if they can't fit, I will put an overflow bin in my garage until they can fit, right? And I'll do that for no charge, and I have to take the risk, and I also have to like say, hey, I have done computers for 20 years. I don't want to offer that service anymore. I can't do that with joy. If I do it, I might be resentful, and I will only do it for elders or for my mother. I'm not going to offer that on the time bank. And you can ask me about it. I might give you like a tiny conversation. I give you some feedback on computers, but I'm not really going to offer that on time bank if I can't offer it joyfully. I have to have that level of self-awareness myself so that I can invite others into that self-awareness. So those are some things that I think are really important about this space tonight, and hopefully we'll surface some of those thoughts about like what your hidden assets are, what your skills are, what are ways that we can move people from the space of scarcity to the space of abundance, and what are the ways that we can think about our existing social and support networks, and then also, think about overlaying Time Bank on top of those networks. So yeah, those are some things that we'll do in the presentation. Before I offer that presentation, anything you want to say, Jelena, before I jump into that part?
I think I just want to double down on the risk we take and being in community and being in genuine relationship. A term or this phrase has been coming up a lot in conversation with friends and communities I'm a part of, that it can often be feel like an inconvenience to be in genuine and trusted relationships with others. There's sacrifice or trading, and I think that we have to be willing to model that and willing to explore that and extravate that. And so thankful for the folks who are on with us exploring that tonight, and thankful for the risk you're going to be taking as you're sharing more of your hitting assets. And also we're probably going to be connecting further. Like, hey, you mentioned you got pet care. I got a cat that needs some attention. So I'll be looking out for you, Sheila, and things like that. But I can pass it back.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to go into a little bit of a presentation, but before I do that, I'm going to show a couple of things. And I'm going to show one, these publications. So this is a publication by Edgar Kahn called Time Dollars, the new currency that enables Americans to turn their hidden resource time into personal security and community renewal. Um, This publication is from way back in the 80s. Let me just see if I don't, oh, 92. The imprint is from 1992. So this was a first publication that was put out by Edgar Kahn, who started something called the Time Dollar Institute, and, ushered us into the sort of era of contemporary time banking. And then Edgar later followed that up with like this other publication called No More Throwaway People, which in 2000, in 2000, right? So No More Throwaway People was the second publication. So two publications by someone named Edgar Kahn, which if you talk to people in the time banking community, is called the father of modern time banking, right? Um, and because I love complicated histories, I am here to complicate the history. Yes, Edgar Kahn absolutely did do a lot to move forward contemporary time banking. Edgar Kahn is responsible for things, well, is responsible for like moving the idea around and touching upon places like Grace Hill Settlement House in the St. Louis, which started their time bank in the 80s. And when there were Reagan budget cuts and we're like, hey, we don't know how to sustain our programs, but maybe we think that community members can do programming and we can incentivize them to do that programming by implementing a time bank. Um, Edgar Khan went over to the UK and like helped to through Martin Simons start time banking UK. So move time banking out into the United Kingdom. Time banking is in New Zealand because of the inspiration of Edgar Khan. And many, I mean, essentially, every community that's been economically marginalized has had a favor economy predating any time banking infrastructure. And the reason that time banking worked is because Edgar Kahn moved an idea into communities that were like, oh, yeah, we know how to do economic marginalization. We don't have money. How can I cook a meal? How can I go to a potluck? How can I do something else that actually allows me to meet my needs if I do not have money? And so um, from that place, I'll offer a little bit of some presentation pieces, and I'll try to make this, just a little bit of a tiny introduction or tiny taste of some things related to time banking. So this is my version of time banking through what I call, an Afrofuturist lens, right? Recognizing that Black communities have always needed to sustain themselves in ways that might mean that we're not using the national dollar, right, or the national currency. So a couple of places that I want to go are thinking about the world view, around just sort of how African-centered values relate to time banking, to think about time banking as a prototype. We've already done a little bit of visioning, so I may dance past that area, and then talk a little bit about, the call to mobilization and collaboration of our cooperative skills that time banking allows. So that's a little bit of our territory to move through. Um, Cola Nut Collaborative grows out of the notion that in West Africa, in Igbo culture and in other sort of West African cultures, the cola nut is a symbol of hospitality. The cola nut is literally a currency. It's an ancient currency like the cowrie shell. We were inspired by the cowrie collective out of St. Louis. Thank you, Chinyere Ote. And cola nuts are a currency that has both value and values, right? And so this is one of the many proverbs that exist around cola nuts. Cola nuts last longer in the mouth of those who value them, right? And the phrase above that, Besasaka, is actually a symbol, the symbol that you see in colorful edges on the side there, which means a sack of cola nuts. And it's a symbol of prosperity. Well, it's a symbol of hospitality, it's a symbol of exchange, a symbol of trade, and in some ways a symbol of prosperity, right? So that's a little bit about sort of the worldview that I'll be touching upon. Um, so when we think about what time banking is, you all already have a little bit of grounding here, but I'm just reminding you maybe of some things you already know. Time banking is just trading time as a currency. So using time as the type of currency that, we is beyond dollars for our skill and service exchanges. So I have an hour of time that I can use helping you fix a part of your bike. I earn that time in my time bank account. I can then spend that on something I need in the time bank, such as helping me to kind of, trim these weeds in my backyard or organize my basement or garage, right? where we're using time as something else, something that we can trade so that we can get the things that we need and so that we can offer up the things that we have. Now, time banking, even though we have this sort of modern iteration that Edgar Kahn brought us, is very, very common, sort of to the values that are present in many African and Afro-diasporic societies and nations. There were all sorts of ways in village and communal culture that we were able to meet our social needs that move beyond markets, reciprocity, collective resilience. And there's a wonderful title by this author named George Britey. I think that's George's last name, called Indigenous African Nations. It's a 600-page PDF. I can't even find the physical book anymore. But, I mean, in that text, George Britey goes into like indigenous African economic and governmental structures. And what you see in those societies are people who are looking to meet their needs, and sometimes through things like chieftaincy or other structures that don't deal with money. There's no money that's moving around. It's just people who are like, yo, you part of my people. I'm gonna make sure that you got what you need, and then we'll figure out how to like, move work around, right? So we know how to do this, is what I'm saying. Um, and feel free to throw things in the chat. I will absolutely, yeah, I will see those later. But Afrofuturism, right? Black people will exist in the future. Are we all agree that Black people will exist in the future? Just throw an emoji if you agree with that. Okay. So if
Yes.
Black all right, Black people will exist in the future. And if that's the case, how will we design social and economic systems that better meet our collective needs than capitalism and colonialism or racial capitalism have done that, right? So the notion of sort of Afrofuturism is just we need to be designing systems that look beyond the systems we exist in now because we know that they are in a consistent state of collapse and rebuilding and collapse and rebuilding and eventually permanent collapse. I don't know when that is. No one really knows how to predict the future, but we know that we should be preparing beyond what we exist in now. So the lineage of the Coconut Collaborative grew out of first the Black Oak Center for Sustainable Renewable Living and Eco Campus in Pembroke Township, started in 2005 by Baba Fred and Dr. Jafunza Wright Carter. They were very, I'm not going to say early, I mean, they were present rather in permaculture and regenerative agriculture spaces as Black people, as people in Black bodies. And they were like, ain't no other Black people here. Peak oil is coming, climate disaster is coming, and we don't see no Black people in these rooms. And it seems like white people are getting mighty ready, for what's coming, and we don't have the skills to face it. So they endeavored to build an eco campus where they could teach Black people those skills. That eco campus is Black Oak Center. It exists here today, and has continued to expand beyond its original 40 acres. So if you're in Chicago and you just want to come to an eco campus, let me know. I'll make sure that I touch base with Baba Fred and Dr. J, and we'll see if we can get you a visit out there. I met them in 2009 when they wanted to launch something called the Healthy Food Hub out of my daughter's school, Betty Shabazz. And it was there that, like the sort of seed of time banking struck upon us. And it came to us through a conversation, with Chinyere Ote out of St. Louis, who started a time bank back in 2007. Um, on the heels of the birth of her second child, she was like, "Look, I do not want to go back to work. I want to figure out how to meet my own needs with less like paid labor. So maybe I can do this time bank with these six Black women in the Gaia Community Gallery, and maybe I can find a way to meet my needs to this time bank and take a little bit of paid work and do some photography or whatever I might be doing." And that idea was so resonant and so different from like what I'd heard about time banking that like I was very inspired to say like, can we build a Cowrie Collective chapter in Chicago? There's all sorts of reasons why it's not a Cowrie Collective chapter, and a lot of it has to do with like Chinyere going 10 years in this time banking thing and saying like, I'm through. And so ultimately like the Coconut Collaborative was born of these two, the marriage of these two projects or these three projects, Black Oak Center, Healthy Food Hub, Cowrie Collective. Um, and hey, reminder that, Adrian talks about science fiction being a way that we practice the future together. So we have the tools to do this. Um, I'm going to dance past these next few slides because I want to spend more time in the conversation we're about to go to. And yeah, but what if Bed-Stuy was a black utopia? You know, replace whatever your city, your neighborhood name is with Bed-Stuy, right? We can build these structures now in our present. So I'm gonna go past that. I'm gonna go past this too. Okay, five core values of time banking. Hey, Aisha is a former member. In this book, Time Dollars, Edgar Kahn talked about like five core values of time banking, and so those are all named here, and I offer them only because they're good values, right? And I mean they are meaningful values that we should actually like reflect on and think about how we use them. The first one is assets. Every person is an asset. Just recognizing that there is, to the title of the second book, there's no one in our community that's a throwaway, right? There's no one in our and the transformative justice movement talks about this too. There's no one in our community that's disposable. No one in our community that's disposable. So if that's a foundation from which we work, then we have what we need to move forward the things we want to build the community we want. Redefining work, recognizing that markets are not the best way to value all work. So right now, hey, when I was a young parent at the age of 22, childcare was a premium. And my partner now, is like, I mean, has three children, that are in their teens. And, I mean, summer camp is out the wazoo, right? All of those services that care for children are things that are highly valued by the parents who need them, right? By the communities who need them. And the workers in those professions are not always well paid, right? So the market don't really know how to value the work that builds community. And we know that like time banking gives us a way to assign different incentives and different value to the work we care about. The work of building community, the work of holding community peace circles, the work of, facilitating the neighborhood assembly, the work of building your local neighborhood association as a power block for your community. All of those things are things that we don't necessarily get paid for when we start doing them. And we should be able to redefine what work is meaningful and valuable. Connected to the next value of reciprocity, right? We give to the community that will support us in receiving, right? So we want to make sure that like we are building networks of mutual aid, right? Mutualism, where the giving is as important as the receiving, right? We want to feel like contributors in community. We want to be able to make the ask when we have needs that our community can show up for. And so reciprocity is a really important part of this cycle because it's the only way this thing sustains, right? It doesn't sustain if we're only giving or we're only receiving. Um, Social networks, the power of networks strengthen all of our best efforts. And so time banking relies on us mapping these social networks and maximizing utilization of them. And then also time bank relies on us on respect, belonging, and inclusion, right? So just recognizing that everybody is worthy of respect. Everybody needs to feel like they belong. Everybody needs to feel like they are included in the thing that we are building. And so those are the five core values of time banking that are important to reference. So I'm going to stop here because this is where we should break into conversation and just kind of talk about some other things. So I'll bring Jalina back to for us to start this conversation. And Jalina was going to talk a little bit about the network night model at Union Capital, and also you might have other places where you want to start. So where should we begin?
Yeah, thank you, Mike, and thank you for that really rich overview of the complex history and where the bridges meet. It's really awesome how the synergies come for Colina and how that continues to grow. I would love to give a bit of background, as Mike just alluded to, of how Union Capital came to form and how we do what we do in terms of reciprocity and social network growth. And then hope to hear from you all. Like, where are you seeing that these exchanges are already happening in communities? Where might there be gaps? Where can we start to vision and get into some brainstorming together? Um, and I'll try and be quick because I know the time is moving because we are grooving. But Union Capital is a nonprofit, community-centered, and based organization that was founded in 2014 the values and beliefs and principles that in the complexities of our histories, the complexities of ourselves as individuals, as community and unity, we need interconnected and bridged relationships to meet our needs and to thrive. Comes from our founder who has background in education and community organizing, who kept hitting walls trying to meet the needs of students, but also the folks and residents organizing in Baltimore, organizing in New York City, where our institutions and our people are siloed. We don't have the relationships between them to bridge the needs, to be in trust and understand each other. And so this organization was formed. Then too, it's some learning in New Zealand, interestingly mentioned earlier. Didn't even know that was going to come up. But our founder had spent time in New Zealand and was starting to percolate and learn from the reward systems and time banking that was happening there. Like we need to interconnect 20th century movement organizing principles with the technology that we have in this 21st century. And so Union Capital became to be formed with the main component disruptor of this rewards app that serves as a tool, a mobile site for majority of our operations. It's like 2 years into being an actual app. Takes a lot of time and money and resources to get things in Apple and Google Play. But we are a site and a tool where we can invest and incentivize people's time and effort building relationships and the connections that make these essential exchanges real life. Um, and so this app platform, we're able to reward folks' time. You log your time volunteering, being in reciprocity with others, whether that be helping out your child's school, that be going to a homeownership class, that be dog walking or pet care, a visual art exhibition, thinking about Reggie, what you shared, if you're taking portraits. Um, but you could log that time and earn financial capital. So recognizing and rewarding the time and effort that literally can be in competing priorities, can be complex, can be hard to unearth and carve out as a tool and a method to ideally get more of us in spaces and places where we grow our social capital. Now, social capital is this term, maybe academic, and Mike was saying it earlier, we're already in community and doing these exchanges and building these relationships, but really social capital is the positive benefit and potential outcomes that come from being in trusted, genuine relationships with each other. So the resources, the ride to the grocery store, the fellow mom who you can vent but also be affirmed, and that your teenager is just driving you up the wall, right? So social capital is what is we're needing saturated in our communities to be able to make these exchanges and make a lot of what we're discussing tonight happen. So at Union Capital, we have this rewards app. We also know the importance of space and gathering and bringing folks together so that we can incubate and also further those networks. And so we host network nights, as well as other nights, partner nights with other institutions and theme nights. But the network night model, we gather in person and we also adapted online. But in person, we are including dinner and childcare to break down those barriers of participation. Often we're, can we go out to this community event? We got to make dinner for the kids and the family. Will our children be taken care of? We try to break that barrier and break it down. And we have some awesome educators helping us out. So shout out Medina Lawson, shout out Alvin Maiden. They're phenomenal. But the first half hour of our nights are that. We're getting dinner, we're getting children situated, family situated, and then moving into a space where we're intro everyone in the space. So we're going around the room, keeping up our norms and expectations, going through the agenda, but we're asking everyone who's there that night to introduce themselves, sharing their name, where you live, and something new and good in your life. And this way, we honor that none of us are above or below the other. None of us are disposable. And all of us have voice and power and something to contribute to the space. And that can be hard to feel coming from the communities that we may be coming from that have been marginalized, jaded, forever, whatever reason of the history and oppressions that we experience and the intersectionalities that we live with. But this way, we also start to learn stories of each other. So there might be a new baby in the room or in the house. There might be folks who are graduating. There might be folks who are just thankful they got out the house and could see other people because they're facing loneliness and they were open and vulnerable to share that. So that first half hour gets us to know each other a little bit better, percolate those thoughts and connections. And then the next section, we're into theme-based conversations. So we can maybe hear more about Mike sharing about the Cola Collaborative, or maybe Ujima joins us and Time Bake folks are sharing about why you should get connected and learn there. Or again, referencing, there's a lot of graduation, it's graduation season, teenagers, middle school, tough development stages. There might be a mom in the room who just wants to sit with other parents and get advice on what to do this summer, knowing that maybe summer camp isn't as accessible and wanting to brainstorm and be in community with other parents. So those conversations happen organically or planned. And then the last section, we form a marketplace exchange where we're asking offers, requests, declarations of the space. So if you can help me with my resume on Saturday morning, I'm looking for some help reviewing this. I'm trying to apply a couple of different places creatively and need that support. So that might be an offer or it might be a request I make of the space. Or others offer oftentimes in our at network nights, folks are offering baby clothes, folks are offering spring cleaning, folks are offering recipes, food, or rides to the grocery store. So a place and a space holder to make those exchanges possible in the night, but also having leaders and network coordinators who help us document that, who help us to try and follow up on those exchanges, knowing that it could be a bit messy. Like, did that stroller go to that person? Did that person get picked up last Saturday? How are we sharing out and reporting out? And how do we keep track of this? We're still figuring it out, both digitally and online. But we do it in relationship. And so we do it in continuing to invest in the space and invest in communicating, taking that risk to share the vulnerability. I need something or the risk of I have something now I'm going to have 5, 10, 11 people approach me on that making them that pie. But to be in these connections and be in these spaces and create them is where we can grow the social networks, grow the reciprocity, and I think begin to grow the infrastructure and the relationships that can translate to fortified time banks, can translate to task force relationships, the community garden plots, the things that really start to grow and flourish when we're in those relationships. Um, so I did a bit of ranting. I was trying to trying to keep myself. Wanted to check if there's any like clarity questions before trying to open it up to some brainstorming and visioning. I've seen Susan jumping on. Thank you for joining us, and Coach Munson too, joining while I was sharing out.
Yeah. So checking for space of clarification and we'll have an activity that will, we'll think about both designing your exchange and also your next steps. So um yeah, so I'm gonna maybe use this space to do use the point the presentation in the direction of like the summary of some of the stuff that Jelena has just named. And I'll also post the second half of what was this agenda as we are shooting through sort of time. But here is a bit of summation, right? So, Union Capitals talked about its network night model, right? And this is just my, attempt in the presentation to summarize what was heard, right? Starting with hospitality, starting with the space of gathering, weaving those offers and needs, having space of exchange, follow-up, connection, reflection, repeat, right?
Mhm.
And so those are just, some things to kind of highlight from that model, but um I also wanted to make sure, and this is also in the chat, the bones of like, building a time bank that were heard in the network night model and that I can affirm are like things that are present in just in general for a time bank, right? So we've got like 7 items here, right? So we need people who want and need this, right? It's great if you are a lone pioneer and like, someone who's really ready to like hold a risky idea for, 20 years. And also, you might not have the thrust or the impetus for a time bank. And also we are organizers. So we think intentionally about like how we organize people so that we can listen to what their needs are and evolve our idea. So hopefully you're holding an idea that you are willing to let go of a little bit and evolve as you meet people who might want or need it to look different, right? So every time bank needs to look like the people who are there in it need it to look. You need trust, right? Who's going to take the risk? So I talked about my ability to take a risk as someone who is organizing an effort that is unconventional, that is a little unusual, that doesn't look the same the way that people are think, civic engagement or volunteer engagement or altruistic efforts should look. And so we need trust. We need to be able to trust ourselves. We need to be able to engender trust with the people that we're organizing with. We might need some physical space. We might need to know where we can gather. And so, I mean, it's been a really hard road because Chicago real estate does what it does, right? And and Colon Collaborative ain't necessarily got an endowment for that. So at various times we've had to have space. We got space in a free community center called Floods Hall in Hyde Park at one point in time. We now have a relationship, with a space partner that's a local boutique store, on the southeast side, and and sometimes we rent space from places like Experimental Station. But we do need spaces to gather. So either you're gathering with a space partner or you're gathering people in your home, but the space is going to be necessary. We need some coordination. Somebody has to hold the center. There is no future in which we and I don't care what the token crypto folks are going to tell you. There's no future in which we build a trustless currency where it's like no one has to hold this. We'll all just do this because we think we want to do this, right? You need someone to inspire people to kind of like come back to this thing that's a little unusual and a little bit hard to grasp at first, but you do need someone to kind of hold that center and coordinate the thing. You need people who are going to share. We invited you into a space of sharing and to think about and reflect on what you would offer, or what you would do, if you didn't have money. But we need people to actually be reflective and self-aware about those things and at some point, way after we've done all of the other things, we might need a place to document. We might need a platform or a rewards app where we can put things. And then we need reciprocity because, once you have all of that, you still need people to both show up for one another, but also at some point show up for the time bank because maybe the coordination needs to change, or maybe it doesn't need to be like a paid coordinator. There is some sort of rotation of support. But whatever it is, we need that reciprocity to be present. Um, so those are a couple of things that I wanna name in terms of needs. And I'm gonna, well, yeah, start where you are, So start with like hosting something, get something together, get people together, do some gathering, do some sharing of offers and needs. Build a rhythm, like you need a recurring space for these exchanges to happen. So you don't, I mean, doing it just one time is what a one-time gathering is. But if you do it on a recurring basis, people get acquainted with each other and the trust, that second element builds much more quickly. And then you might need some tracking or a time bank and all of that before you launch the platform, right? All of this happens before you kind of begin. So yeah, I'll stop there. Um and okay, so we've got some questions that are starting. Yeah. Yeah. I we got questions that are starting, and I think what are we, 10 minutes out from conclusion? Is that where we are?
Yes, y'all are doing great. We
Oh,
if y'all want to transition, if we're at transition to Q&A, then this is a great time to do that. Yes.
hey, that's good.
As I said, do we want to do Q&A or do we want to try and map out the bones a little bit, like a little bit?
Oh, if y'all want to map it out, I can give y'all some time to map it out as
Okay.
well.
All right. So we can't give them that space to reflect. I just, yeah, I was just trying to like
Yes.
manage and monitor the time and space. So, yeah, what's here? Um, so yeah, I think you're talking about that reflection components, like what ingredients already exist. You've heard us talk about the relationships, the people, the space, the coordination, the offers and needs, the communication, and the shared values. Um, And so this is just an opportunity for you to share back to us what ingredients already exist in your community. There we go. Thank you. Thank you for that recommendation. Maybe 2 to 3 folks. Just feel free to put a hand up or put a C in the chat if you're like, hey, I want to share.
Mm.
I can share out quickly.
Okay.
I think just the fact that Ujima has already organized the timing for us here, is very useful, very helpful. I like also that like sometimes in newsletters they'll share out like a featured author or something. Um, Pretty soon after I found out about Ujima's time bank, that's how I ended up like getting involved in the exchange just because I saw that someone needed a thing that I was like, oh no, I actually like really enjoy doing that and would love to help out. So I don't know. I feel like Ujima has already created a lot of the infrastructure for us. We just need to like build it up and get people more active.
Okay. So I heard that you've got communication tools already in place. You've got host or coordinators already in place. And there's a shared values within the larger Ujima network and community. And you've even got a documentation system. So I mean, I'm hearing a lot of stuff here. And apparently you've got gathering space. What I'm saying is that there's no reason your time bank shouldn't be the bomb. But maybe, is it trusted relationships? Is it an offers and needs process? Is it people willing to help? Like, what is the thing that you think might be missing? Maybe that's a different question. Ooh.
I'm seeing Mary put in the chat, we just don't have a rhythm. I'm curious
Ah.
if Mary or folks who are part of the time bank, what that rhythm, what that groove is needing.
Yeah, as you were sharing about the rhythm, I was just reflecting how the time bank, like we don't have a gathering space for the time bank specifically. Like we have a time bank platform, but like even hearing you guys talk about like the network nights, or just like the in-person experience of gathering, like I'm feeling like that's one of the things we don't have is a rhythm of people being able to meet each other and gather to have that like that the cadence. And I'm wondering in that regard, like how often should a rhythm be? Like what would be a good rhythm? Or does it depend on the different groups? Like what is the network night rhythm? How often does that happen? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add in then I definitely want to welcome Mike because one part to my brain is like it's gonna depend on the community, like what folks need, what they feel is sufficient and sustainable. And with UC's model, we gather twice a month in person in two different parts of the city, in Jackson Square area and then in East Boston. And our East Boston Network Night is led and held in Spanish, facilitated in Spanish as Community East Boston is primarily Spanish speaking. Um, and then twice virtually. So network nights are happening 4 times a month, but two in person and two virtually. So that monthly cadence in different spaces we find is good consistency, and frequency and predictability that members and folks who want to get engaged, like some people already know the schedule before we're putting it out, and that's amazing.
Yeah, and one of the things that was very clear when I entered the time banking space was that a lot of the time banks started with a rhythm of like a potluck. It's just like the most common thing that people on the time bank coordinator idea exchange, which is a Facebook group, they were like, hey, start a potluck. And there used to be these things that Time Dollar Institute, timebanks.org used to do called Gathering with a Purpose, which were like, these just is essentially just trying to support and train time banking coordinators to like build really robust, hospitable gatherings. Now the Cola Nut has evolved its strategy multiple times, right? There's sort of 9 years in, in terms of like the Cola Nut Collaborative's existence. And the original thing was like, oh, we'll start out with like these opening Cola 101 things, which were a little bit heady and not enough of an experience. So scrap that plan. Then we went to monthly in-person time salons, and we started those right around 2018, going into 2020. So we had 2 years before COVID was like, nope, can't do that anymore. And so then there's this reset of like, oh, like how do we gather now, right? Started to do some virtual time salons. Those were a little bit more challenging to figure out how to facilitate well and how to hold well. And it's really, only sort of last year that, struck upon a gathering that is now called Shaping Change Facilitator Festival, which is a sort of a full day event of that's both about the time bank and not about the time bank. It's about getting people together in a space, of hospitality, as Jelena's named, of like, hey, we're gonna feed you. We're gonna make sure that there's a wonderful water tank there. You're gonna get coffee. You're gonna get tea. You're going to like have a really robust experience where you're gonna come into a room with a group of people. We're going to do an offers and needs market. We're going to do a keynote conversation. We're going to do, a rotating credit club. So we're going to have multiple facilitated experiences where people are sharing their resources with one another in different ways. And then at the end, we're going to be like, hey, and if you really loved and enjoyed this, there's a time bank where you can do this so that we don't have to necessarily wait for the annual gathering. And then added, and after that, brought the virtual time salons back, which, you are getting the benefit of like a time salon format. But the virtual time salons were brought back because they become a monthly space where we can check in with people, we can do these offers and needs markets, we can, meet one another from the different parts of the city, encounter people who we might have only met through the time bank. And then hopefully kind of keep the rhythm so that, when we do have these in-person gatherings, the virtual gatherings flow very well into, hey, come out and gather in person for the in-person time salon or the in-person Shaping Change Facilitator Festival or the in-person Community Peace Circle. So tethering every single gathering to another gathering and making sure that like people know this is a community of events that you can drop into and you'll meet some people who you might know in the time bank. So I think just trying to tie the cadence together and utilizing every gathering as a way to reify. It seems like you all are trying to like get to know each other in this specific way. Um, if you did that through the time bank, you wouldn't have to wait. And the last point I'll note is that when we did the virtual time salon last night, we had some people who were not on the time bank. And I mean, we did this sort of offer, a very quick offers and needs market round. People went around and shared an offer, people went around and shared a need. And at the end, folks were like, wait, I didn't write everybody's thing down. And I'm like, you see the exact problem I was trying to solve with the time bank. Because I can't write it down either. I don't have the capacity to manage all of the network weaving that you all have done here. And you felt great about it. So just put it on time bank. And, and it's easier for me to reference. I'll stop there. I did see Justin raise a hand, but then put it down, so maybe that question has already been addressed.
If no one else has a question, I can still ask.
I'm not seeing any if you want to go, Justin.
Okay. My question is, and maybe you kind of just hinted on it. Um, I'm curious what you all estimate as the biggest challenge. Like, so say all the seven things are happening, but what do you think is the biggest challenge? And do you see any patterns like across culture? So, Sister
Mm.
Jalina, I heard that you were in a brown, Latinx community. So my question is like, is it culturally embraced by certain communities more than others? If so, why? That's the second question. But my first question is, what do we think is the biggest challenge or barrier in activating this approach?
Hmm.
That's it.
Did you want me to pitch or you want to pitch?
I'm marinating because
Oh,
it's a really
okay.
good question. And getting the call in of being in Brown Latinx community. I'm trying to think about how to form my words culturally. So please, Mike.
Okay. All right. And I see that there's a breakout room that's forming. So, yeah, so there's some great questions in the chat. So maybe I'll just offer this final reflection and then, let you all do what may need to happen. Um, Okay. Biggest barrier. Biggest barrier that I would name is like the fact that time poverty is real. The reason that the volunteer, and altruism system doesn't work is because different people have different, their time is valued differently. There was a time in my life where, look, I need every hour to work that I can. I can't afford to be out here just doing free community projects. I'm at a different phase in my life that really allows me to show up differently. And I know that not everybody is at that phase of life. So every time I talk about and present the time bank, I'm presenting it based upon the context of the person that I'm talking to. That's a good organizer at work. I want to agitate the person based upon what they care about. And so if there are ways that like I can make the time bank a little bit more legible to them by saying, hey, this is how you can show up to the time bank. If you have the capacity, if you have the time, if you want to do a specific thing more often and you're passionate about a thing and you want to share it, the time bank is there for you. But there's everything in here is voluntary, right? Everything in here is like something you're choosing to do because you want to show up differently in community, and we are just trying to build an infrastructure to incentivize you to do it. I am telling the time bank in that way, and I'm not telling it in the way that, again, it was told to me when there was, I mean, the potlucks are great, and also it was for smaller communities, wider communities, and I knew that it wasn't as applicable to the example of Chicago. So I pitched the time bank very differently. So that's what I would say. Story tell differently around what you're trying to do. Okay.
And if I may, I know we're up against time, but thinking about another challenge, a great challenge that gets causes a lot of friction and tension in a relationship is, and in these community spaces, is the fact that guaranteeing safety is never certain. Um, and so as much as we're trying to communicate and have folks build trust, there, particularly in our East Boston experience and East Boston community, ICE is on every corner these days. And so folks getting to the physical space and us having protocol and doing what we cannot guarantee that someone coming out to build that connection or to be in those spaces is going to make it home. And it's a really unfortunate and really like a abysmal. There's a lot of other words, curse words that are coming to mind, and I'm trying to siphon them right now. Um, but there's that the the powers that be that are trying to cause harm, and then there's some. I think often when I'm trying to encourage people, hey, you didn't get that call back, or that you're not reaching that person, just to keep encouraging them to try. They're just like the it's not worth my time, or that person doesn't want to meet me. And so like the effort that it takes to build that that safety, that trust, when we're often, I think there's a brushstroke of safe space, brave space, but it really is risky to be in community, and that can be a challenge and friction. So we do our best to be hospitable, we do our best to try and bridge, but we also have the tenet that we try not to do for others what they can do for themselves. And so there are moments folks gotta try and push through that, but also there's disappointment, there's unmet needs, as we continue to try and meet them in these structures too.
Mm. Yeah, and that I want to just underscore and underline, right, this idea, because it's been asked to me before. Like, I mean, every time I talk to somebody about a time banking platform, they're like, so is there a way that we can just like build a platform and there's not a person in the middle? That's exactly why the person in the middle is necessary. Because, if someone posts an offer to the time bank and it never gets picked up and they feel like, oh, no one wants my contribution. That's not something a platform can solve for. There's no sort of AI chatbot that's going to soothe your lonesome soul, your desire for belonging. But a person can say, you know what, hey, that's a great offer, and I mean, we might just need to like figure out another offer. Let's think about something else you can offer, or maybe your need has never gotten responded to. The time bank coordinator can be out in the world saying, we actually need to organize new people into the time bank because this is a gap that's consistent and present and visible in our time bank, and we need other people to come in so we can fill that gap. So those are all reasons to have a person in the middle, or people in the middle. Yeah.
Okay. I know we are at time. And I want to respect and honor our facilitators' times as well because you guys put in that work, and are putting in that work. And so can we get a round of applause for Yes. And then, Jalina, I see you drop these things in. Do you want to share them out loud before we close off? I don't want to, I know you put them in the chat. I don't want to end it there.
Following our agenda and some of our materials that we're working off of, but just and also love to end workshop just invitations, call to actions, things to do with this learning as you're percolating. Host an offers or needs market. I'll share the invite to come to network nights if you want to attend and be in that space. Mike was encouraging these invitations of start a recurring exchange gathering. So recurring, consistent, get folks to know and be in those spaces with you. And then explore our community time bank. There are many of us who are part of Ujima and in the time bank space already, but if you're not, get familiar, get to know Ujima's awesome infrastructure, maybe give some feedback on what that rhythm could be or look like, or if you're someone who's connected to spaces that you could host, that could be an offer, it could be an exchange. With some invitations we want to leave you with, and also Mike, want to say if there's anything you want to share and add to that.
Yeah, I mean, Ujima has my details, but there's also a dot card link there. For some reason you want to see some of the other projects I work on. But the line that I had after this invitation was like, don't try to build a perfect system. Don't try to fix all the things up front. Get messy, make mistakes, go Miss Frizzle, right? And so ultimately, like, we're really trying to design something that we've never seen before, that we've never experienced before, and so design from the perspective that you're not going to build the right thing the first time. You got 500 members on that Cousins Time Bank. I know because I just looked at it. And if you need support, like, I mean, there are things on the national level currently that we relaunched the coordinator call for timebanks.org. So, drop into that. Chat on the Bench happens monthly, so you can send folks around to that if they just want to talk to other people who are doing time banking. And yeah, let's build community around time banks, especially those that are happening in Black adjacent and Black led spaces.